Thank you for... Hey everybody, my name is Gio Perez and welcome to another episode of LAMA Talk, and I'm here with my friend
Steven Reich.
And today we're going to be developing a show on BJJ or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Wait, don't you mean GJJ or Gracie Jiu-Jitsu?
You know what, researching for this show, I saw some guys on a blackboard explaining what the difference was. I know Carlos Gracie continued to develop BJJ as a sport. And then you have Helio Gracie continued it as the actual art. As a
practical.
As a practical, and then continue also the Gracie name, the legacy.
Okay, so there are two Jiu-Jitsu systems, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. They're both out there.
Yeah, they're both, it seems like they're different to me. You know, but one's for sport, one's for the
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is more competition-based, and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is more practical.
Can I say that BJJ is more watered down? Maybe. I know, maybe watered down for competition. I don't know. That would be up to...
Probably more of the focus.
The focus of the competition, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, so let's start from the source, okay? The source is, where did these guys learn jiu-jitsu? Do you know?
I believe it was from a Japanese master.
Yeah, Japanese master. His name was Mitsuyo Maeda. Okay, Mitsuyo Maeda came from Japan, and to believe it or not, he came to the U.S. first to develop his jiu-jitsu. But you know what happened? There was a lot of racism during that time. I'm talking about the early 1900s, and he decided to go to Brazil. Okay, he went to Brazil, and then he met Helio's and Carlos's father, and then as a favor he started teaching the kids his art, jiu-jitsu. But not only that, but he actually was doing mixed martial arts during that time already. He was already developing an art to be able to fight against stand-up fighters, which is really cool. Yeah, most people don't know that, but he started developing that.
Like any fighter.
Yeah, any fighter. Mostly stand-up fighters, because it's like, a stand-up fighter doesn't know what's going to happen to you if you eventually go to the floor and start getting choked. That's what he was developing. Right. He was developing the ground game.
But he would have, it's not like he wouldn't have fought a grappler. There just weren't that many grapplers back at that time.
No, there were, it was jiu-jitsu, then he moved on to judo, and then he started developing the ground game. Right? That's where that came from. So the philosophy is there. That's where the base is. So I think this is what happened with Carlos and Helio Gracie, that they got that philosophy and then continued with it. And that's where you started seeing them develop the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu name, or the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu
name. The idea of having a system that can beat other systems.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or anything that comes their way, basically.
Right. Yeah, pretty much.
Being the most practical, or because one's competition, so just the system that prevails.
Well, I think it was more the self-defense part of it, because I know Helio didn't have the same physique Carlos had, and he wanted to develop something that anybody could come in. The original Karate Kid could come in and actually be able to use these techniques to be able to fight bigger fighters.
Right.
And be able to defeat them. So having somebody that doesn't have that much strength, doesn't have that much physical ability, be able to develop techniques that you could take down a stronger person. I think that was the focus. And being on the floor, on the mat every day, practicing every day, and then developing these techniques to be able to take bigger guys down.
Right, but was that Maeda's focus, or was that the Gracies?
That was the Gracies' focus.
That they kind of took what they learned and capitalized on the ground game. Mm-hmm. And in particular, Helio had some health issues.
Right.
I'm sure that he needed the effectiveness to be there, to compensate for that.
Right. No, he needed to. So imagine doing that and then being on exhibition fights where you would see a smaller guy be able to fight bigger guys, and that's how the Gracie name started to develop, like fighting guys.
Well, they chose, Elio was the poster child. He was the guy who did most of those demonstrations, probably because he was so unassuming.
Right,
You know, he was just this smaller guy, you know, they're like, oh, I could easily beat this guy, and then he would use his jiu-jitsu and change the game. Right,
and now I know he fought one of the best Japanese fighters during that time. You know, he came to Brazil. His name was Kamura, and Helio Gracie challenged, you know, Kamura to fight him to show Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And actually Kamura said, you know what, I know you're good, but I don't think you're that good. I'll let you fight my students.
Up to this point, Elio was undefeated.
Undefeated during that time. Yeah. So he fought his student. He beat the student. He choked him out or did some sort of technique, beat him anyway. And then he had no choice but to fight Elio. So when he did that, he fought him, but Elio lost. You know, Elio lost, but still, he knew that he was going to lose, but he did it because he wanted to bring out Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you know, up to the surface, so they know that the techniques were working, that they were good enough.
Right.
You know,
he wanted to go the distance. Like Rocky.
So that they call it the modern day samurai. You know, the South American samurai during that time, right? And then later on, then they came to the United States because in order to expand the art, you couldn't do it from Brazil. The biggest stage was here. Was in the U.S., so they decided to come to California.
Well, they did expand the art in their family. I mean,
they
created an army of Gracie masters to populate the world whenever they were ready to conquer.
You know? It's a whole mastermind. I mean,
what are they like?
What are you going to do today, Pinky?
It's like the same thing I do every day, Pinky.
Try to take over the world.
It's like there was like, what, a dozen? I don't know how many. There's like a dozen Gracie kids that Elio was training, and they're all amazing. They're all amazing at Gracie
when I hear
Jiu-Jitsu.
you talking about this, it reminds me of the Star Wars and then developing all the what is it, the stormtroopers.
The clones?
The clones. They're cloning the Gracies. There you go.
Well, they're all a little different. I mean, just like Elio, there were big Gracies. I mean, I don't think some of the. I mean, look, in the UFC, they did not pick the champion per se. They picked the guy who was the least. He was the most unassuming.
Just to show the techniques worked.
Right. They wanted the guy that they would. Oh, I easily could beat that one. It's like, okay, you'll take that one, and
but before going into the UFC, when they came to the US, I mean, they did. You know, it wasn't that popular. I mean, nobody knew about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because everybody was practicing karate, kung fu, or different other styles that were more popular because of the movies. You know, you had,
especially in the 80s.
I mean, the kids would see like Van Damme or Bruce Lee and all these guys.
Chuck Norris.
And
Chuck Norris
they would want to
hardly
practice.
ever was on the ground.
Right. I mean, now they have to bring in ground work into their arts now because they saw what happened.
But that's because of the Gracie influence.
Of the Gracie influence, right? Yeah. So they came here. They started developing, a bunch of different students. Some of the students would say, "Hey, you know what? There's a master over there that's developing this art, and then they would have the Gracie Challenges, right?
The Gracie Challenge,
and they would fight kung fu guys, karate guys. They started, choking these guys out and proving that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was street effective.
Right. Well, I mean, those guys, they were just getting used to doing what they always would do. You'd see them in those videos when they're in those challenges, you'd see them stretching and getting ready to do all their kicks. And they're going in, I'm going to do my usual, I'm going to do my front leg side kick, and then I'm going to follow my back kick or whatever they're going to do. And as soon as these guys got pinned to the ground, you would see them flailing, not even knowing what to do, and then the Gracies would take over, and it was over.
Right.
Every time. It's, they talk a lot of smack on the feet, but once they got down to the ground, it's a whole different story.
But the other thing is, these things were happening with no rules, right? No rules. Which means that the Gracies could go in there and grapple. Now, if we would have said, let's look at it different.
Are in the challenge.
No. I know, but let's look at it this way. Let's say we would have said, hey, there's no grabbing, there's no choking, there's you're just gonna fight feet and hands. That's it.
Then the Gracies would be screwed.
Yeah, the Gracies, right? Okay, yeah, you know, because they're two different arts, man. They're totally different.
Right.
You know, one is grappling, wrestling, and all these shoot fighting. That's totally different than the stand-up stuff, right? And I'm talking to the guys who actually took those challenges. You know, I would say you're kind of stupid because, I mean, not stupid, but if you would have known now, right, that you couldn't have done that or you were going to get choked, you never would have, you know, taken those fights.
Right. And why do you need rules to be effective?
Right.
It's like if without the rules, all of a sudden it's not working.
Right,
you know?
right,
I mean, these guys, you know, they're like, you know, rules is an inconvenience because if it was a real fight, you know, they would prevail because they would just smother them and use their jiu-jitsu.
And I think there was a little bit of ego there too from the other martial arts masters.
Oh, sure.
They should have been like, you know what? Know your opponent or know your enemy first.
Right.
Right? I would have been like, okay, let me see what they do first.
Right. It's like every boxer you've ever heard get into the UFC or into the ring. They're like, oh, 2 hits and they're down, you know. UFC, they don't even take it seriously. Have you ever heard Floyd Mayweather? He downplays UFC on a regular basis. He thinks it's a joke. Yeah. And it's just like, it is not, you know, it's just a different set of rules and, you know, it's a different world.
Mayweather goes into the UFC ring, he's going to get his ass beat.
MMA is not boxing. Boxing is one system, you know. It's just like boxing yourself into anything, like kicking, you know, just grappling against kick. It's like taking a shark, you know, a shark in the water is way more scary and dangerous than the shark on the land. Right. You know, the shark on the land doesn't really scare me that much. You know?
Can't do nothing. Right. Yeah. You know? Yeah. You just got to be careful from its teeth.
But like you were saying, fast forward, you know, they were waiting to bring it, you know, that the UFC is what really popularized it here in the States. And that was 1993 after a decade of watching movies.
What are we going to do today?
You know,
we're going to take over the world.
Same thing we do every day, Pinky. But it's just, I mean, you know, they were ready. It was poised to take over because nobody had seen that. We had spent years watching Jean-Claude Van Damme show how jumping, spinning kicks were the most practical thing that would never work, really. but it looked like it did in the movies. It looks
pretty cool.
You know, and so, you know, here comes, you know, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, which was created by the Gracies.
Right. Okay, now listen, now there's a little conspiracy happening with this UFC.
With the first one.
The first one.
The first few, you know.
The first few.
You know.
Okay, well, the conspiracy goes that the Gracies cherry-picked all these fighters.
Right, because they created it.
Because they created it and because they wanted to highlight, you know, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, right? So they wanted to highlight it, right?
Right. But they advertised it like, you know, I mean, you know,
masters against masters.
Yeah, style against style, you know, you know, boxing versus taekwondo and judo versus sumo and what, you know, and all the savate versus this. Right. You know, and it looked incredible and your mind is going toward Bloodsport, the movie Bloodsport, and you're thinking, oh, it's going to be these, you know, top guys in their craft and they're going to fight and we're going to see which is really effective, you know, which systems are really effective. I mean, keep in mind, there was no mixed martial arts yet, really. Not
the way it looks today.
Right. And so you're just thinking style against style, you know, which is better. And, you know, they totally kind of, they took advantage of that.
I mean, the only master there was always Gracie. He was the only master there. The only one that actually seemed like he had like a background from training, you know.
Right. Like a true representative.
Yeah, a true representative of the art.
Style,
you know, it's not like you got For example, let's say somebody who started a certain art and then you got their son in the ring, you know, or their nephew, or whatever, you know what I mean?
That's exactly what he was. He was the son.
He was the son.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, no. He was, no, I'm saying he was the son, but from all the others, there was just like some guys that took the
wouldn't
fight.
it have been great if they were all the son of the masters?
Yeah. It would have been great if they were the son of each master, right? But no, it was like Royce Gracie versus a bunch of...
they were like wrestling stars.
Yeah.
It's like it's
football. Like some guys that would take a fight. You know,
it's like instead of getting a Taekwondo master, they got the wrestling star called Taekwondo Master, and you know what I mean? Who really isn't a Taekwondo guy? He's just playing a Taekwondo guy,
right?
You know, like in pro wrestling, and so there's like drama, you know, get the Taekwondo guy that, you know, against the Jiu-Jitsu guy.
And I know later on they went into these guys' backgrounds, and some of them were lying. You know, it was not
most
real.
of them.
Yeah,
they didn't check their stats at all.
Yeah,
they just
the record. I mean, some of those records.
Some of them said they were
fake.
like 200-0, and you know, or I am a 10th degree master in like 20 styles.
but okay, going back to it. Okay, so when they would start fighting against Royce Gracie, all these guys didn't know anything about ground, so all he would do is take him down, choke him, and he would win. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu would look really good because there was nobody there that actually had any.
It did look good.
They looked really good because nobody else had like wrestling.
It totally
experience.
Worked.
They didn't know how to defend. So his mastermind really worked, you know. And then you get guys like Bill Wallace, Sugarfoot Wallace,
who was a commentator.
That talked a little bit about it on a video that I saw. While researching this video from the Karate Nerd, is that?
The Karate Nerd, Jesse Enkamp.
Okay, yeah, we saw that video. It was pretty cool. And I mean, I want to hear from Kathy Long that was there too. You know, Kathy Long, we're waiting for you here, okay? We want you to come to the show. Tell us a little bit about what you experienced that day. But anyway, you had all these stand-up fighters looking at the way that rules were set up on the Gracie's favor. You know, so they could win. Do you believe that?
Well, it's not like the fights were fixed. It's just that, you know, these guys weren't the top. I mean, I remember when we fought it, when we saw it, the first UFC, my friends were very disappointed. We were all disappointed in the guys they got in the competition. They weren't really representing of the systems. And I don't know if that's entirely the Gracie's fault. Maybe if they upped the ante, the prize money, maybe you could have attracted some more accomplished martial artists. Right. But the guys, you know, but then again, if they researched these guys, maybe they thought they were accomplished because they said they were, you know, you say it out loud. It sounds like horse shit, you know? I mean, like, how could you do it? You know, how could you not research the guys coming on, you know, fighting? But apparently they didn't research too hard. And so, the conspiracy is really, they let those things happen. They didn't, you know, there were hardly any rules. So, you know, I don't think you could, I don't think the referee was allowed to stop the fights. Like they had to be, you had to throw in the towel or something to stop. I don't know if the fights could be stopped. They didn't think it would be an issue. They thought there would be a clean winner and loser every time. You know, so I mean, it showed Gracie Jiu-Jitsu being very effective against, you know, strikers, which was not developed in 1993, was developed in the beginning of the 1900s with Maeda, you know. And imagine all those years getting ready for something like the UFC. It was a piece of cake. It's a piece of cake. And it did what they wanted to do, which was highlight Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and be able to expand the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu art all over the world. And it happened. You know, now you have some of the best schools here in California and all over the world too, being run by the Gracie family. You know, and all of them.
Yeah, all of them.
Or they all trace back to
they all trace back, and they're all good. You know, they're all good at what they're doing. And one thing I have to say about the Brazilians, like, I love the way they share their brotherhood with each other. I mean, and then they bring all that that family, I would say, that family joy into practicing arts for people that come in, and they treat them like family. You know, and when they're getting the belts and everything, I mean, you don't see any other martial artists art systems doing the same thing they brought in. So not only did they bring the Japanese art, but they also brought that Brazilian flavor into it, you know, which is that you know, I would say Latin or family flavor into their martial art, which is, it's awesome, you know, to be able to bring let's say somebody that's like that's not so physically developed to come in and be able to develop themselves in that art. So that's one thing I love about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or, you know, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Both of them.
Yeah, both of them. They're good. They're good. Well, that's our show on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, guys. If you have anything to say, if you have any comments or anything that you'd like to share with us, please comment down below. Don't forget to hit the like button, okay? And you could also find me at Martial Art Talk on Instagram. You could also email me at LAMArtialArt@gmail.com. Where can they find you, Steve?
You can find me at Like Water Productions on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thank you so much, okay? We love you guys. Talk to you guys soon, and keep on kicking, guys.